But let's get back to the Dangote Cement conversation. Let's bring on the program Omotola Abimbola, who is a research analyst at Afrinvest, to give us a few minutes in this space to talk about Dangote Cement market briefing later today. Omotola, thank you very much for coming on the program. Good morning.
Good morning, Boston. My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen the numbers. You folks are research analysts. First half 2016, not a roller coaster for Nigeria's most capitalized company and #1 cement maker, not just in Nigeria, but across Africa.
Correct. Not the roller coaster probably describes it best. If you look at the numbers that came out, in terms of revenue, we saw that year on year, the revenue of the company went up by over 20%. And that's due to the fact that in Nigeria, the market was stronger than initially estimated because last year the cement company did a price cut across all its product lines. So that's in a way helped it push more volume, and that to sustain a very healthy revenue growth profile in Nigeria. But the bigger story for the top line growth is based on its Pan-African exposure now. The company was able to leverage on its exposure to the Southern African markets and the West African markets to be able to grow its top line by double digits for the half-year reporting period. But then when you look at profitability, that's weakened expectedly, and that's due to two reasons. We saw that operating margins for the company declined by about 17% year on year to around 33%. Relative to close to 50% operating margin that we saw last year. And that's due to the fact that the price cut that they did last year and the following price cut that also happened in January 2016 had an impact on the margins for the company. And then the second factor was due to cost pressure because we saw disruption to gas supply in the Niger Delta in the second half of the year. So that had an impact on the energy cost for the company. So we saw fuel and energy costs for the company jumping by about 30% quarter on quarter. That is when you compare the first quarter of 2016 to the second quarter of 2016 in Nigeria. So for its main cement plants in Obajana and in Ibese in Ogun State, both were experiencing shortages of gas supply, and thus the company had to move to other much more expensive source of energy, that is LPFO, and as well as coal at some point in time. So that had an impact on the cost of sales. So we saw that rising by over 50%, and then OPEX as well, because the company is now in a ramp-up stage across all these other plants in Africa. So they were employing they were getting new employees to run the plants and all that. So this also had an impact on the operating expenses for the company. So when you combine the pressure on cost of sales and on operating expenses, so these two factors had an impact on the bottom line performance for the company. So we saw operating profits, EBIT, slowing for the half-year reporting period, and then down to the bottom line, the PAT, which declined by about 15% year on year for the half-year reporting period. But then also thanks to the devaluation of the currency, that was able to help the company to generate some foreign exchange gains when they converted their assets and liabilities in foreign currency to Nigerian naira. So they booked about 27 billion naira FX gains. So that moderated the impact of the higher cost of sales and operating expenses and the slower markup on production, rather on sales.
Omotola, if I may cut in here very quickly, you've put very nicely, as it was as an analyst, what the macroeconomic environment in Nigeria are for Dangote Cement. But we have just about 2 minutes to wrap up this conversation. So let's step outside the country, where Dangote Cement is ramping up on its investments over the recent years. 101% was year-on-year revenue growth because of non-Nigeria operations. But now the company is spending less money on capital projects outside Nigeria, where some of its main volume is coming through from now and helping it to stave off. If you take the 16 other African countries numbers out of Dangote, what you find is really, really small, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't say that, Brasin, because although Nigeria is just one of the system markets, Nigeria still constitutes a huge chunk to their revenue contribution as well as bottom line performance as well. As at half year, about 8.8 million metric ton of the total 12.6 million metric ton that was sold in cement was actually sold in Nigeria, here in Nigeria. So even despite that, Nigeria still remains a very important market for the
Omotola, sorry to cut in there. Nigeria is still a main market for Dangote cement, whatever happens. Right. Thank you very much. Let's hang it in there for today. We'll hear more about that later in the afternoon. Omotola from Afrinvest. Thank you very much. We'll be back in 1 minute.